Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Inside Local webinar. My name is Miles. I run a company called Bright Local, and I really do welcome you to today's webinar. Today's topic is reviews and reputation management for local businesses, which is a bit of a mouthful, so may just shorten that down to reviews and reputation management. This is actually the fifth webinar in the Inside Local series, and as I can see, we've got another great turnout today. A lot of familiar names who have been on previous webinars, so welcome back to you, and welcome to our new viewers. If you haven't joined us on a previous Inside Local webinar, you are extremely welcome today. And I'd like to welcome you obviously on behalf of myself, but also on behalf of Linda Bouquet from the Local Search Forum, and also on behalf of our two guest speakers. Thanks for taking time out of your busy day to be with us. We do appreciate it, and we will ensure that that time is well spent. We had a good run through of today's kind of presentations yesterday, and I'm very excited to kind of sort of hear them in full. And I know that we're all going to learn a lot from the experience and wisdom of our two highly regarded and well-recognized search marketeers. But before I introduce them formally, which I will do in a second, I wanted to run through the agenda so you know exactly what to expect today and also kind of what is expected of you. So the agenda has got kind of 5 parts to it. We're going to go through 3 kind of presentations at the start, looking at the evidence and ammunition for reviews, and I'm going to be handling this piece. Then I'm going to pass over to Don to kind of focus on kind of Google Plus strategies and advice. And the reason we wanted to have a section dedicated to Google Plus is because it dominates our thoughts, and our actions and our time and our headspace as kind of local search marketeers. So it kind of warrants specific focus in its own right. Then we're going to kind of take a step back and look more broadly at kind of review strategies and look kind of beyond Google at other kind of review sites such as Yelp and Citygrid, and just what the general strategies for getting more reviews and how you get over some of the kind of blocks or the impediments to kind of getting reviews for yourself or for your clients. Then at that point, we're going to jump and have a Q&A session. And then at the end of it, if you guys are able to hang around, we will have a sort of small section at the end that looks at some of the best tools in the industry for managing reviews. So both Don, Phil, and myself have kind of put our heads together and come up with the tools that we like. And there are lots and lots of different tools out there, but we're going to kind of give a quick preview of the ones that we particularly like. And actually, Don has his own tool as well as Bright Local has their own kind of review tools. So we will give those a little bit of a plug in this section. But if you can hang on to us to the end, we should give you some good tips and resources for which tools to use. A few housekeeping points. As I said, it's partly presentations and it's going to be a Q&A. In terms of the Q&A, if you want to ask questions, please locate the question module that you've got in your GoToWebinar control panel. Fire through those questions. We had a few questions that have kind of come into us in advance, so thanks to you kind of early birds for sending those through. It looks to be a fairly kind of common thread of similar kind of questions and issues that people are facing, so hopefully we can address those either in the presentations or in the Q&A at the end. The webinar is being recorded. The webinar recording will be available by Monday, so it'll either be Friday or Monday for that. Unfortunately, we haven't got a webcam view today, so it's just the sort of slide deck and our voices. The slide deck has already been uploaded to slideshare.net. And tomorrow you will get an email direct from GoToMeeting with a link to that, so you can kind of view the presentation afterwards if you need to. And like I said, the email will have all kind of the necessary follow-up details. So, who are our two speakers today? We're very happy to be joined by Don Campbell. Don has worked in the kind of technology and search industries for over 15 years. He used to work at a small business called Microsoft that many of you may have heard of. He actually was a technology evangelist there. Since leaving Microsoft, Don has set up his own initially a consultancy called Expand to Web, but they're now actually a tools and training business that focuses on helping small businesses get ahead online. So Don has got a lot of experience in the kind of technology side, but also in the training side for helping small businesses get ahead online. Don is a very well-respected blogger. He blogs around a lot of related topics to kind of local search and to kind of WordPress in particular. He contributes to the local search ranking factors study, and Don recently launched a new review tool called Get 5 Stars, which Mike Blumenthal, Dr. Maps, I believe has had some involvement in and maybe will be a sort of partner in, and Don will tell us a little bit more about that in a bit. So Don, lovely to have you with us today. Thank you very much for sharing this hour and a half with us. Our other speaker is Phil Rozak, and Phil is actually the second Inside Local webinar that Phil has spoken on. He spoke on the first one, so he's becoming our go-to guy. Phil is a well-respected SEO and blogger. I read pretty much everything that Phil writes about. So we'd suggest you check out his blog, which is at localvisibilitysystem.com. He's also a contributor to the Local Search Ranking Factor Study, and he's presented at places such as SMX. Reviews, I think, is kind of sort of Phil's pet topic. In fact, that's what he presented when he presented at SMX early this year. He kind of talked about reviews. So thank you also to Phil for making time again to join us. And you've also got myself and Linda. And like I said, we really do appreciate you taking the time today. We hope it will be incredibly valuable to you. And I'm now going to move on to the first section of the webinar. So I'm reading the sort of first section, and what I want to talk about was the kind of evidence and ammunition for reviews. And I know a lot of you here are probably, either very well established on SEOs, or just kind of getting your kind of sort of teeth into it, or maybe you are kind of intrepid business owners wanting to kind of make the most of the online opportunity. I'm sure a lot of you will understand, kind of why reviews are important, the power of reviews. It doesn't take, it's not rocket science. It doesn't take a genius to understand why having a positive reputation is important. But what I was hoping to do in this section is just to kind of underline, kind of why reviews are important, but also going to give you some ammunition. So, as a search marketer or consultancy, if you're selling sort of review management services, or you're looking to sort of start that up, there's some great ammunition to kind of back up any of the kind of rhetoric you've got about the value of reviews. And the key that is the kind of ammunition to add to your kind of sort of sales drive in this area. Reviews is a pretty hot topic right now. This is some headlines from some newspapers and blogs that kind of came out this week, where a number of SEO companies have been fined in the US for publishing fake reviews. I thought it was kind of very topical. We could see, we've got this kind of particular story kind of quoted in search engine land, The Guardian, which is a very kind of popular newspaper in the UK, and also The Register, which is a very well regarded kind of tech blog. And I think it just sort of shows how sort of topical and wide-reaching kind of online reviews are, because they kind of touch the consumer space, say, a lot more than other sort of search topics. We can be very kind of laser focused on, kind of on-site SEO, but can you really imagine a kind of national newspaper kind of talking about on-site SEO? Not really, but reviews are something that kind of touches consumers wherever they may be, and so it's something that's much more in the kind of common mindset. But it's interesting to see how topical they are. Um, I want to sort of talk about the kind of power reviews and kind of why they're important. And I thought a great thing to start off by saying is that there's two sides to every review. And this is a bit of a sort of it's a double-edged sword, it's a bit of a sort of pun here. Reviews have got kind of two elements for kind of why they're important. The first one is they help with ranking. And this is a chart taken from this year's local search ranking factor study. And what it shows is that review signals have a lot to contribute to the ranking ability of a business within local search. If you look at the kind of dark grey sort of pie slice there, that is basically review signals, which is a kind of aggregated sort of selection of review quantity, review velocity, review diversity. It's actually the fifth most important sort of group of factors in kind of local search ranking at a kind of general level. When you start to look at the sort of specifics of different technology, whether it's mobile versus desktop, and whether it's kind of pure local results versus the kind of sort of blended organic results, or the localized organic results, reviews kind of go up and down in terms of the power. What's interesting to note with ranking, if I also look more deeply at the ranking factor study, yes, reviews are important to ranking, but actually their ranking power is starting to fall off a little bit. And what this particular chart shows you is basically the local search ranking factors study from 2008 on the left-hand side through to 2013 on the right-hand side. And what I plotted in that orange line is where the review factors came in importance in the sort of study. So look, in 2008, in the ninth most important ranking factor was related to reviews. In 2009, the seventh most important ranking factor was related to reviews. Then in 2010 and 2011, you can see that the sixth most important factor was review related. But if you jump forward to 2013, that's actually dropped right back down to kind of position 12. So this chart shows the kind of rise and fall of reviews as an important ranking factor. That's interesting because obviously, as kind of Google evolves and sort of develops its algorithms, it starts to look at other signals and bring other signals into play. And it seems that reviews are kind of getting less important as a ranking factor and the influence that they have. Interestingly, when you also look at the kind of study over time, reviews have become much more complex. In 2008, there was literally just one mention of reviews in the study. In 2013, there's something like 7 or 8 different factors that go into making up the different kind of review signals. So it's got a lot more kind of granular, and our understanding of reviews has got a lot more kind of granular with it. But ranking is only sort of half the story. I've got a couple of screenshots here that kind of clearly show where the other sort of powerful impact reviews come in, and that's creating standout. As an SEO or a sort of search marketer, you want to get your businesses kind of onto page one of the results. Well, gaining that visibility is great, but if you look clearly here, which of these businesses stands out most clearly on the page? It's the one that's got 4.7 rating, and it's got the 15 reviews. It's got a lot more kind of real estate given over to it. It's a lot brighter, a lot more vibrant. So you can see what kind of where a consumer's eye is going to be drawn to. So getting onto that first page is important, but once you're there, you've got to stand out from your competitors. And reviews and star rating and quantity of reviews gives you that opportunity to stand out. And similarly with Google's new kind of carousel results, I've got a sort of snapshot here for restaurants in Pasadena. Of the sort of 5 results shown in the kind of carousel, which one are consumers going to click on? Well, if you look at the options, you've got 4 that have got a hatful of reviews and a really good star rating, and then you've got Bill's Chicken that's got 4 reviews and no stars at all. I'd love to see a kind of click through levels based on all of those, but I'd be pretty sure that Bill's Chicken gets a lot less reviews, a lot less click throughs than the other 4. Anyway, I know Don is going to talk a lot more about Google, so I'm not going to tread on his toes too much here. What I do want to run through is some evidence and ammunition for reviews. I wanted to look at some of the key findings of the local consumer review survey that was conducted by us at Bright Local and our research team earlier in the year. This is actually the 3rd year that we've conducted this particular survey. It was conducted in Jan and Feb of this year, and we polled over 2,000 consumers. We asked them 17 questions all about reviews. We have our own consumer panel at Bright Local, which is predominantly made up of people based in the US. It's an online panel, and we asked them a number of different kind of questions throughout the year, focused on different topics. But this one was all about reviews. I just want to kind of talk about some of the key statistics and findings of that, and how reviews have an impact both on consumer research and consumption, but also through to how reviews help them form opinions about a business, and how they then act on those opinions by using local businesses. So the first question we asked was, do you read online customer reviews to determine whether a local business is a good business? And if you look at the chart there, you've got the 3 colors. You've got green for 2011, blue for 2012, and orange for kind of 2013. And you can say overwhelmingly the answer is yes. In fact, if you can consolidate the 2 yes answers there, 85% of consumers read online reviews to determine if a business is good. So that's great evidence for supporting the need to kind of manage reviews if you're ever kind of talking to your customers about that. The next question we ask is, how many online reviews do you read before you can form an opinion about a business? And what we really wanted to kind of understand here was how quickly consumers are forming opinions about a business. Just checking the questions to see if things are coming through. Okay, yep. I thought it was a couple of people saying they couldn't hear me, but it doesn't look to be the case. So yeah, so we really wanted to know is, are consumers getting that opinion and forming an opinion quickly or slowly, and how is that changing over time? And what we can see is that actually consumers are forming opinions faster now than they were in 2011. And if I just kind of highlight some of the key pieces from this particular chart, what it shows is that 70% of consumers read less than 6 reviews before they form an opinion. And if we then look at the other end of the spectrum, so if you're looking at this chart here, it's got 0 reviews on the far left hand side, and then 51 plus reviews on the far right. If we look at 7 plus reviews and I look at that over time, what this says on this particular chart here is that in 2011, 44% of consumers had to read 7 or more reviews before they formed an opinion. But if you jump down to 2013, that number halved to 22%. So what that shows is, yes, consumers are reading a lot of reviews. It's 88% of consumers are reading reviews to form an opinion about a local business, and they're forming that opinion faster now than they were last year and also the year before. And what's very significant about that, as a local business or as a kind of search marketeer who provides reputation management, is that if consumers are only having to read 6 reviews, then you better bet or you better hope that your best reviews are your most recent reviews, because those are the ones that tend to kind of get served up top, which means that you've got to be really on it and really kind of proactive in managing down any kind of negative reviews, and also kind of keeping your reviews fresh, because freshness of reviews is both a ranking factor, but it's also important to consumers, particularly when they're buying a service rather than a product. A product over time is relatively stable. It doesn't change too much, but a service can change significantly because it's based a lot on staff, a lot on the management, the company ownership. So having a recent set of good quality, positive, fresh reviews is such an important thing to have. And that's very good evidence for when you're, kind of sort of selling in or talking about kind of review management services. It doesn't happen, it's not a one point in time affair. You need to kind of keep on top of your reviews and reputation so that, the latest 6 reviews that anyone is reading are the best 6 reviews that you've got. The next question asks, how do online reviews affect your opinion of a local business? And if you look at the answer to kind of far left there, it's, positive customer reviews make me trust a business more. And if I kind of highlight the key fact there, it's 73% of consumers say positive online reviews make them trust a business more. So suddenly you've got people consuming reviews more, forming opinions faster, and if those reviews are positive, then they really start to trust a local business, which is an incredibly positive sentiment. But leading on from sentiment, we want to know about action. So how do online customer reviews influence your decision to use a local business? And if I highlight the right-hand side of that particular chart, which I've done here, you can see that positive reviews make me more likely to use a local business. And again, if you compare 2011's results, which is around 50%, to 2013, which is, I believe, is 65%, you can see the significant increase in the influence that online reviews have on the decision to use a local business. So if we look back, what I'm trying to kind of build a picture of here is, we looked at consumption of reviews, we looked at how quickly people are forming an opinion, we looked at, what kind of opinion they're forming, and now we're actually looking at how they act on that. And it's just kind of, the real key thing for local businesses, because they want customers, they want calls, they want people knocking on their door, kind of walking in their shop. This is really the kind of key focal point is, can a positive online reputation actually drive new customers into my business? And this fundamentally shows that yes, it can. And the final chart I wanted to sort of share with you, I think this is kind of the acid test for online reviews in general, is that, can you trust online customer reviews as much as personal recommendations? And we asked our kind of consumer panel to kind of pick from one of 4 statements that they sort of felt most akin to, and they were, yes, if there are multiple customer reviews to read, yes, if I believe the reviews are authentic, and yes, for some businesses or some business types, and not for others, or no. And if you look at the sort of far right hand side of that, you've got the kind of no column. You can see that no has dropped again significantly from 2011 down to 2013. It really has dropped down. So people are trusting online reviews a lot more than they have done in the past. And 79% of consumers will trust online reviews as much as personal recommendations. And I think that's hugely powerful. And again, that's gone up since 2012 and since 2011. So I think in terms of evidence and ammunition for why reviews are important, they may not have such an impact on ranking as they used to, but you can certainly understand they can impact whether a consumer chooses to use your business or chooses to look further at your business versus your competitors based on what they can understand through consumer reviews about that particular business. There are a number of different kind of charts and slides and data as part of that survey. It's available on our website, and the link is there. And Linda, if you could just send the link round in the chat box to everyone, that would be great. We give everyone a license, by the way, to kind of reuse this data and to reuse this chart. So if you want to put that in any of your own kind of presentations or sort of sales materials or kind of blog about it, then you can actually kind of download the charts from that URL as well. So please go ahead and use them. If you could give us an accreditation, that would be great. And if you're publishing them online, if you could kindly give us a link back, that would also be much appreciated. But I hope this is kind of great evidence for you guys in terms of kind of supporting your sort of sales or your sort of promotion to customers or existing customers about the benefit or the need to kind of manage reviews and reputation carefully and closely. So that kind of concludes the first section of the webinar. We're not going to do a Q&A at this point, but I am going to hand over to Don Campbell. So Don, if you could just look out for a second, I'm going to pass over control to you. So Don, coming your way now,
Okay,
and we can see your screen.
great. Okay, can you hear me, Miles?
Yeah, I can hear you loud and clear.
Good deal. All right, well, thank you very much. Welcome, everybody. My name is Don Campbell, president of Expand to Web. Provide tools and training to help small businesses succeed online. And I know Miles already went through that for me, did a nice introduction. So today I'd like to talk with you about Google reviews. And that Miles did a great job of teeing up the whole, why reviews are important, and I'm sure many of you are convinced of that already. Um, but I want to just kind of focus on Google reviews here at first, because we get so many of the common problems and issues that people run into are around the Google reviews, right? And the other thing is that Google reviews there's some interesting ways that they help you show up in the search results too. So it's changing a lot. Miles showed some screens earlier about what the search results look like. And then there are other things that are emerging, things like the carousel that started showing this summer. And there's evidence that shows that having more and better quality reviews are helping people to show up in this carousel as well. So Google is always experimenting with this stuff and trying to surface information. And just everywhere I look, it seems like reviews are a great answer to not only ranking better, but also once you are ranking, getting people to click on your business instead of one of the other links on the page. So pretty important stuff, I think. Um, by focusing on Google, though, in this part of the presentation, I'm not suggesting that you only focus on Google. Um, we're just focusing because, like I said, a lot of questions around it. But as Phil's going to point out in the next section, and this is his slide, by the way, it's a really nice depiction of the local business reviews ecosystem. And what it's trying to show is that it's not just your review strategy should consider the entire review ecosystem. You shouldn't just focus on one site. You really want to build a diverse set of reviews from as many different sites that are relevant to your type of business as you can. So just want to kind of clarify that before we jump into some of the Google specific stuff. All right, so here are some of the common questions that I hear, and I talked with Phil and with Miles and Linda about this as well, and they're seeing these, and there's some others, and we'll be glad to answer those in the Q&A. But these are some that we get a lot, and I'm sure you may be familiar with some of these. Where did my reviews go? I mean, a lot of businesses are just really upset about losing reviews. They don't know what happened to them. They worked really hard at getting them, and they're gone. Another question is, well, how can I get those reviews back? If you're an agency or an SEO, you might be having clients that are asking these questions. What should I tell them, right? I mean, gosh, how do I fix this situation, or how can I at least set their expectations about what's going on? Another question: how do I get more reviews? And then, obviously, if reviews are important, how do I get more of them? And then another real big one, just what do I do about negative reviews? Because every business from time to time is going to have that happen. And so these are some of the questions we're going to go through in this section of the presentation and just kind of talk about. So the first, let's just start by understanding Google's review guidelines. I mean, it's kind of like Google is that mean school teacher you had in 7th grade, and you better play by the rules or else you're going to get smacked with that ruler. And so it's best for us, I mean, Google, in terms of Google reviews anyway, Google is setting the rules here. And so we should definitely take that extra few minutes to read those guidelines. I'm going to share a link with you at the end. In case you haven't read their review guidelines, you should. It only takes a few minutes. It's not like a huge document that you have to read. And it just gives us a good starting point to help us understand how Google views online reviews and what behaviors they're targeting. And in a lot of cases, some basic stuff. I mean, so many of the times when I get questions about reviews being filtered or situations where reviews are missing, it's just stuff that's right here in the guidelines, things that were violated, and Google just said, hey, I'm going to filter or remove this review. Now, a lot of times it's not, but I'm just saying, a big chunk of these can be addressed by understanding the, Google's guidelines. So with that in mind, how do we avoid the Google review filter, right? I mean, one of the most common reasons for reviews disappearing is that Google review filter. Google basically has an algorithm, and it's looking at these reviews and it's trying to determine, hey, does this meet our guidelines? Was this automated? Is it spammy? It's got all these factors, just like the Google search engine, right? I mean, they've got this algorithm that's crunching through these reviews and trying to determine if this is a legitimate review for the business. And if not, it's going to filter it out. A lot of times you'll hear maybe one of your customers will say, well, I did leave you a review. I can even see it when I log in, but then nobody else sees it. That's probably because Google has actually filtered that review. And sometimes you can work with your customer and they can edit or modify that review, or maybe go back and post it from their mobile device, and then boom, it'll actually show up. So chances are, if that's the situation, then their review's been eaten by the Google review filter. So how do you keep reviews out of this filter? Well, do you remember, maybe you saw the movie Jurassic Park. That was one of my favorite books, and I love that movie. But remember when the kids were trying to, the T-Rex broke through the fence, and the kids were like trying to escape, and Dr. Grant was trying to, he told them, don't move. It can't see you unless you move. Well, it's kind of like with the Google review filter. Don't send it signals that make it want to filter you, right? You want, so we want to look at what those signals are and then what we can do to avoid them. So here are a few of the things, right? I mean, there are a lot of factors, and in fact, nobody outside of Google really knows what all the factors are, but we can put together quite a few of them based on experiments that many local SEOs have done, and you'll see a lot of discussions in Linda's forum about this, and on other sites like what Phil's got and Mike Blumenthal and others, where we've got a pretty good idea of some of the things, and also the Google review guidelines, right? I mean, here and just I'm just going to walk through a few of them that kind of stand out here. One of them is getting a whole bunch of reviews at once. I mean, one thing that happens is, Google is really looking for, just like a link profile, it's looking for a natural review profile. It's looking for reviews that kind of trickle in over time, and build up, not 10 reviews in 3 days or a bunch of reviews in a week when there haven't been reviews for 6 months or 2 years. And so that's where people get burned a lot, is they get a whole bunch of reviews at one time, and that triggers the filter that starts looking through and going, wait a minute, what happened here? Did they buy these reviews? Were they automated? It's not natural that all of a sudden a business that hasn't had an online review in 18 months gets 10 in a week. So, you have to be really careful, and it's not one of those things where you can just kind of binge on it and like get a bunch of reviews and then forget about it for a year. It's something that needs to be built up over time. Otherwise, you stand a big chance of them being filtered. Don't use review stations. I mean, Google at one point did endorse this. Now they don't. They say right in their guidelines, hey, if we think that you've got a computer in your office and you're telling people to leave your reviews before they leave, that's not good. We're not recommending that, because we want these to happen naturally. You should recommend your customers to leave a review for you. If I think it's great to ask, but ask them to leave it from their own device or from their own computer. Um, Sometimes customers will post similar reviews on other sites. You want to be careful of that. If Google sees the same review text on many different review sites, that's not good. I've even seen people copy the reviews from Google and then put it on their website. You don't want to do that, because if Google thinks that this is duplicate content, it'll just take the review down if it finds it. It doesn't always find them, but if it does, a lot of times it'll just filter the review out. Another thing Google explicitly said is they know spammers use URLs when they post comments and reviews, and so they said if you put URLs in your reviews, they're just going to be filtered. So you want to make sure your customers aren't doing that. And that's one of those things where if a customer leaves you a review and it does get filtered and only they can see it, that's one of the things you could check for. Say, wow, did you put a URL in there or something? If you take that out, maybe it will work. Don't do a review of a bit of your own business. Maybe if you're using the same Google account that you claimed your Google profile with for your business, and then you leave a review with that user, that's not a good thing. Definitely don't offer incentives for leaving reviews. I mean, Google recommends against this. If they find out you're leaving incentives, then that's against their rules. And it turns out, though, that I've found, and I'd love to hear what Phil and Miles and Linda think about this, but I found that people are willing, your customers are willing to leave you reviews anyway, and sometimes it's actually bad to like sort of compensate them for it, because I think there's this sort of reciprocity here where if you've got a customer that's happy, they're glad to leave you a review and help you out if you make it easy for them. And Phil's going to talk about this a little bit more in his section. The other thing is, don't buy reviews. Don't, and under any I've seen people just try to justify this in many different ways. Just don't do it. It's just going to catch up with you, even if it helps you for a short time. it's totally not worth it. And you're going to get found out, and then it's going to create a lot of problems. So avoid that. So those are some of the things. Now Phil has, and there's a link to it here. Phil's got a really nice checklist on how to avoid the Google review filter. It's a PDF file you can grab from his website, and it's just a nice little thing to print out and just kind of look through and sit and keep with you, so that you can kind of keep an eye open for it. It's highly recommended that you take it out or take a look, and it gives you a nice little list of things to kind of walk through. All right. So some of the most upset calls I get from business owners are when they've lost some or all their reviews in Google. I mean, it's hard work to get those reviews, and it really stinks when they just disappear and get filtered out. So, um, what you've got to find out first is if you've got a bunch of reviews that are missing for your business, find out if they've been filtered, right? I mean, see if you can, if you know one of your customers, see if they can log in and verify that they can see the review. And then if you can't, maybe you can address it that way. Maybe they can change their review or repost it. So it could be that many of your reviews were filtered. And then if not, or is maybe the other real common thing that happens here is that your business listing is claimed by multiple accounts. And so what happens, there's a few different situations here, but sometimes some of the reviews can be associated with one account and some with the other, or you might have a duplicate account. And so that can cause a lot of problems. And I've even had some business owners that accidentally claimed it themselves with two different IDs. So that'd be the first thing to check, is just to make sure that you know all the Google accounts that you have, and that you only have one claimed verified listing. It also could be the chance that someone else has claimed that listing somehow, and then there are some things you can do to sort of bring that back. One of them is to go in using your account and edit the review, but don't change anything. Like go in and actually, not the review, I'm sorry, but your Google profile in Google Places, and then submit it, but without changing anything. And they call that poking the review profile. A lot of times that'll transfer the ownership back to you as the most recent owner. Also, Google announced they've got a method now. There's a link where you can go in if you've moved, like if your business has moved or it's been rebranded, where you can actually submit and say, look, I moved and you've got, my reviews are missing. They didn't come over with me because I've got a new physical address now. And you can actually, there's a form that Google has, I've got a link to that later. There's a form where you can actually go out and request this transfer. In a lot of cases, they'll actually do that. I mean, a person's not going to call you back, but they do have a system where they take these requests in and they'll move the reviews over. And I know people that that's worked for. So that's another consideration. If you've moved or changed the name of your business or something like that, you could look into that. And they do have a place to report these kind of changes now. There are also some really good discussions on Linda's forums that I'm sure you guys are familiar with, and hopefully she'll place a link to that in the chat window there, because it's just, she's got a number of threads. They call them like sticky threads that kind of stick to the top, where people are just asking these questions, and then Linda or other experts have answered and have some pretty good insights onto these things. But it's really tricky. You're not always going to be able to get these missing reviews back. Okay, I mean, that's just the thing. You're not always going to get them back, but it's good to at least know. I know from my perspective, it's good to know, okay, I understand why it happens, and I understand what is possible and what kind of steps I can do. And a lot of times you're going to get some or all your reviews back. In some cases you're not, but at least you're educated and you've tried everything on your client's behalf or on your own behalf. Okay, another question we get a lot is what do I do about negative reviews? I mean, a lot of business owners I talk to pull me aside and they say, hey, so you work you know something about this Google ranking thing, right? Well, I don't want to do online reviews for my business because I'm afraid someone might leave me a bad one. I mean, I get that a lot, believe it or not. I mean, a lot of people are just like, I just don't want to participate. And as you guys know, they don't really have a choice in the matter. And this is one of the reasons why online reviews are so scary for business owners, because they don't have any control. Anyone can go leave a review about them, and it's just not even fair, really, in some cases, right? I mean, people can leave a review, and sometimes people get upset, so it's a scary thing. So what do you do about negative reviews? It's really important to, I always say, identify them before they happen. I mean, engage with your customers, ask them for feedback, and get to them before they're upset. Most of the time, and you guys, if you've been in business for very long, you know this, if someone's upset, if you listen to them, it really 90% of the time it diffuses the situation. If you listen to them and show them that you care, then that's what they want. They want to be heard, right? And if they're not heard by you, they're going to go out on Yelp or Google and leave a bad review. So many of these situations you can take care of before they happen. Now, obviously, not all of them. And in a lot of cases, though, what's nice with Google is you can actually provide a business response. So if somebody leaves you a review and you don't know who it is, or you weren't able to contact them and take care of it, then you can actually go and provide your own response to that. If that doesn't work, if it's very inappropriate, or if it's like naming people, there you can look at the Google guidelines, and they have some very specific things where they say, hey, if this is in a review, we're going to take it down. And you can actually flag an inappropriate review and get all your friends to flag it as well, and at least bring it to Google's attention. You can also, the other thing I just want to point out is that, these reviews, they really, they're an opportunity. You really need to view this as an opportunity to showcase your customer focus. In fact, there are a lot of ways that negative reviews can actually help your business. I mean, there's studies that show that if you have like 10 5-star reviews, people don't trust that as much as if you have maybe 8 5-star reviews, a 4-star, and a 2-star, or even a negative, because then they know it's not cooked, right? They go, okay, this is real. I mean, some people people realize that not every 100% of every one of your customers is going to be jumping through the roof and totally happy. I mean, some people just are upset and they leave reviews, and people know that. So it's okay. What's not okay is to only have one review that's bad. That's why you need to be proactive, like Phil's going to talk about. But these reviews also can provide you feedback on ways to do better with your business. They can improve your SEO, and they're a real golden opportunity. I mean, I've seen many times where people have taken a negative review and turned it into something really positive. And I know where they actually, maybe they responded for the business owner, they had a response to the review, or they connected with that customer, and those became some of their best customers. So it really is. I'm not just saying that. I mean, there's some really good opportunities that you can derive in terms of new business from online reviews. When responding to reviews, two things I just wanted to mention about that. I know I'm running short on time here, but when responding to reviews, if you can't respond to a review for some reason, it's probably this whole duplicate issue again with your profile. So what you're going to want to do is go in and try and find out if someone else has also claimed that profile, and go in and actually edit your profile, and don't change anything and submit it. I'm talking about your Google Business Profile. So that's one way you can try to wait a couple of days and then see if you're able to respond. When you do respond, make sure it's classy, right? This is your chance to show you're taking the high road, you're listening to and engaging with your customers. And Google has some really nice advice on there. I'm going to give you the links at the end in just a minute. But don't get personal. Treat feedback as helpful. Keep it short and sweet. Thank your reviewers. Be a friend. They've got some actually really good. It's not cliche stuff. If you read through it, they have some really nice tips on how to respond to a negative review if you can't personally talk to that customer, if you don't know who it is, but you've got this negative review out on your Google page. All right. So in terms of another question, how do I get more reviews published? Phil's going to talk about this. It's all about being proactive and asking for reviews. You need to implement a process. You need to train your staff. You can't just do it all at once. Got to make it easy for your customers, and most importantly, be the kind of business that people want to refer. I really highly recommend that you read this book. I read this book. It's called The Referral Engine by John Jantsch, and he talks in this book about being the kind of business that people want to refer. I mean, 64% of business owners say they get over half their business from referrals, but 80% of businesses do not have a system, okay? And reviews and referrals in some ways are very similar, right? It means that someone is so happy that they're willing to tell other people about you publicly. And so what I've done at Expand Web after reading that book is I mapped out all my customer touch points to figure out, when can I be asking people for feedback? When can I ask them for referrals? And it's really surprising. And in this book, he gives some really practical advice. This isn't just a book on concepts. I mean, he's got some really practical advice on how to interact with your customers and ask them for reviews in a real classy way. So these are the resources I wanted to share with you. I know that Linda has a bunch of links, and she's probably put most of these in the thing anyway. But basically, the first one there is something that Mike Blumenthal put together. It's a nice post on how to explain to your clients and set their expectations when the reviews were filtered. The second one is Phil's checklist that I showed earlier, the Google review guidelines, and a few other ones. So anyway, with that, I want to say thank you very much for your time. If you had any questions about this, feel free to contact me at ExpandAWeb or at Get 5 Stars. I'm on Twitter, and there's my email address. And that is all I have today. Thanks.
Don, that's great. Thank you very much for that. That was very kind of clear and very kind of detailed. So thank you. I particularly like the kind of Google review monster that you created there, kind of going around and kind of gobbling up your reviews. I think that's quite a kind of apt definition, the kind of T-Rex of reviews. What I also kind of took away from that is, as with anything related to kind of Google and to search, you're kind of doing things slowly and steadily and naturally appears to be the kind of order of the day. Whether it's building links, or building citations, or launching new web pages. If you just kind of bombard Google with it, they're going to register that as unnatural behavior and kind of downgrade you for it, or remove remove the reviews in this particular case. So I think that's just such a kind of overriding message for anyone involved in search, is you just have to do things in a natural way, and then you can avoid any of these sort of penalties that can occur. We have had a lot of great questions come through. I just want to make sure that everyone knows that we are kind of taking note of those questions, and when we get to the kind of Q&A at the end of Phil's presentation, we will address a lot of those questions. So keep firing them through. I'm noting down a lot of the kind of general topics that are kind of coming through. Linda's doing a great job of answering them, and also been some wonderful bits of kind of tips and advice from people in there. One interesting one is about how people talked about, or Don talked about, leaving reviews at a sort of place of business. And someone said, hey, what about mobile? If I got my customers to leave a review on their mobile, which is connected to their own kind of data plan rather than Wi-Fi, can that help? And I've actually seen people kind of talk about the benefit of leaving reviews via an app. And actually, potentially kind of more stickiness if a review is left via an app, via and left by a site. So that's interesting there. Daryl has given us a good little tip there. So thanks for that, Daryl. But anyway, we will address those questions more at the end. I'm now going to pass over to Phil to take us through his piece. So Phil, bear with me a second. Where are you? Hang on a second. Phil, it should be coming your way. Do you see the request?
Yep, I see it. Can you hear me, Miles?
I can hear you. I can't see your screen yet. Coming through in a
Okay,
second.
how about now?
Yes, we can see it now.
Wonderful. Okay,
Okay.
yeah. Thanks a lot for that, Miles. You covered some great stuff, and Dawn, you certainly covered some great stuff too. So I'd like to sort of expand out a little bit and talk about kind of the big picture strategy of how to get reviews, not only on Google Plus, which was kind of what Dawn talked about, but also on a variety of other sites. Sorry, just let me. Let's see, the slideshow is kind of acting weird. Okay, there we go. So this is probably old hat to you guys, but I'd kind of like to talk for a minute about why getting reviews on a diversity of sites matters. There are three main reasons. The first reason is it kind of helps you cultivate other sources of visibility, of local online visibility for your business besides just Google. Obviously, Google is kind of an unpredictable creature. You don't want to rely on it too much. And those other little sources of visibility, like City Search, Insider Pages, Yahoo, Judy's Book, those sorts of places. Obviously they're kind of dwarfed by Google, but in aggregate, on the whole, they actually add up. So it's kind of low-hanging fruit, to rank. To rank well on those sites, when somebody actually goes to one of those sites, not everybody does, and they search for businesses, if you just have like a couple reviews, you'll probably rise to the top. So it's, compared to how, ranking in Google, the bar is pretty low, and so it's definitely in your best interest to kind of diversify, get visible on those other sort of non-Google sites. The thing is, a lot of your competitors probably also don't do that. Everybody's thinking about Google, maybe sort of Bing, Yelp, maybe Apple Maps, but they forget about the other sites where it's actually pretty easy not only to get reviews but to sort of rank well. So that it's low-hanging fruit for that reason too. Probably the biggest reason is that one big reason to diversify is what happens when somebody searches for your company by name. I mean, let's say your local SEO campaign is working, and you get visible for some search terms that you want to rank for. A lot of people aren't just going to call you on the phone or click through to your website. They're actually going to search for your business by name. And actually, you may be familiar with Google's local carousel, but the black strip that now shows up at the top for some Google searches. When you click on one of the search results in the carousel, it automatically performs a branded search, for your business by name. So you sort of want to control. Here's just an example of what I'm talking about. This is a client of mine, but when you search for his company by name, you want this page to be impressive. At the top you see, he has more than 5 Google reviews, so those pop right out. Down below, he has a couple of Yelp reviews, a couple of reviews on Yellow Pages. Excuse me. That creates a good impression. That's the kind of impression you want to create. I mean, as opposed to having it be where somebody searches for your company by name and doesn't see any review, sees either no reviews or like a bunch of reviews on Google and no reviews anywhere else. You don't want that. You want to sort of you want to create a wow factor. And so for that reason alone, it is worth kind of diversifying your reviews portfolio, for lack of a better word. The other reason is that it seems to help your Google rankings. Not your organic rankings, obviously, but rather Google Places, Google Plus Local, whatever you want to call it. And Miles and Don sort of covered this, so I'm not going to go into great detail. Obviously, reviews are just one factor out of many, many factors that sort of decide your local rankings. So they are not. It's certainly not the case that he or she with the most reviews wins, but they are a factor in my experience. Not only Google reviews, but of course reviews on other third-party sites like Yelp, Yahoo, Insider Pages, etc. That's been my experience with clients. The other people who contribute to the local search ranking factors would seem to agree. Because the quantity and diversity of third-party reviews are number 12 and number 18 respectively on the local search ranking factors study. So obviously not at the tip top, but they are a factor. It also just kind of stands to reason that third-party reviews matter because basically Google knows everything about your business. They know where you have reviews, where you don't have reviews, how many you have. So it only makes sense that reviews on sites other than Google do matter to your rankings to some extent. The other reason, and this is just kind of common sense, is you don't want to keep all your eggs in one basket. Google is unpredictable. Last year it was very hard to get any Google reviews to stick because the review filter was so strict. A lot of them just wouldn't see the light of day, and so a lot of reviews got filtered out. But then come this past January, Google relaxed the filter, and a lot of those reviews magically came back to life. But it just goes to show, how unpredictable Google is. You don't want to just cultivate reviews on Google. Obviously that's a big part of it, but you need to diversify. Similar with Yelp. Yelp is a little more predictable in that they are always strict about which reviews get filtered versus actually appear publicly on your listing. But Yelp is just such a difficult creature to deal with. You've got to have a bigger review strategy than just Yelp or just Google. Now, of course, that's easier said than done. There are kind of 3 main barriers between you and getting reviews on not only Google Plus but also Yelp and kind of a panoply of sites. The first type of resistance you're going to encounter is from the review sites themselves, and we've sort of talked about the review filters and how they are a problem on both Google Plus and Yelp. But those probably aren't going away anytime soon. So, for better or for worse, you do need to figure out a way to get reviews to stick on those sites somehow. And I'm gonna get to sort of to more specifics on that in a minute. But that's an obstacle you have to deal with. And even if your customers are perfectly willing to write you reviews, and you're very proactive about asking them for reviews, the sites themselves kind of they throw some hurdles, between you and more reviews. So, excuse me. So that's one factor you have to deal with. The other sort of form of resistance that's just sort of baked into the review sites themselves is bad design. A lot of people, a lot of my clients have said, that their customers find Google Plus very hard to deal with because you do have to set up a Google Plus profile in order to be able to leave a review. It's no longer the case that you can just use Gmail. And a lot of people find that cumbersome because Google asks you a lot of questions. They want you to sort of create a big kind of complete, almost flashy profile. And you don't need to do that in order to write a review. And even if you give your customers the very best of instructions, Google does not make it as easy as it could be to write a review on Google Plus. So your efforts to get reviews on Google Plus may suffer just from Google's bad design. That's kind of the same way with city search too. Now, obviously, a lot of people don't really focus on city search as much and getting reviews there, but their layout is a bit counterintuitive as well. Like, the button to leave a review doesn't even say click here to write review or write review on it. It's just like a couple of thumbs up. It's all the way to the right-hand side of the page, and it's not built very well. So that's another sort of obstacle. Even if you're doing a great job with asking for reviews and your customers are gung-ho about leaving them for you, the review sites themselves make it look a little tough sometimes. The second sort of barrier you have to overcome, or rather kind of work around, is just the customers themselves. They may not be very computer savvy. They may not use their their smartphones that much. Maybe they use computers only to check their email and go on Netflix. But that's an obstacle you have to deal with. And so you have to, but you want reviews from those people too. Maybe all your customers are not very computer savvy, so you have to work around that too. Some of them are lazy. I know I'm guilty of that. Sometimes we just don't feel like doing something, even when we're happy with the service and perfectly willing to write a review. So that's an issue you have to work around as well. All of us are busy and distracted, and that goes. A lot of your customers themselves may be business owners, so that alone can stand between you and reviews. Sometimes we just feel like this little guy. We don't want to do anything that takes thinking. We don't want to, even if we love a business and we don't mind putting in a good word for us, for them. Sometimes it's just tough, and unless you, the business owner, really break it down into easy manageable steps, the reviews might not happen. The third kind of resistance is from you. You sort of have to. I've seen a lot of business owners sort of set up mental barriers, sort of their own mental barriers. They might be confused and daunted by the whole process of writing reviews, and for good reason. There are a lot of different review sites. There are sometimes a lot of steps, especially for Google Plus. It's not as easy as it could be, and you may also be daunted because you haven't had good experiences with reviews. Maybe you hired a reputation management company that sort of screwed things up and didn't give you any reviews, but sent you a bill. That's understandable. Obviously you're as pressed for time as anybody. You don't have time to walk every single customer through the process of writing a review. So you have to figure out a way to kind of do it economically without spending all day on it, because you have a business to run. It's so easy not to. I think Dawn kind of alluded to this a few minutes ago. It's just easy to kind of crawl under the blankets and say, this whole reviews thing is so tricky. Is it worth it? Nah, it's not worth it. I'm not going to bother. So but it's also easy, if you do it right, if you kind of plan, if you work hard and smart, it actually isn't that hard to get reviews, even though it's always going to be easier simply not to. So I'm going to get into the strategy, sort of, I'm going to develop on these points a little bit right now. If I had one piece of advice for you, if I had to sum up your strategy, what I would suggest to be the best strategy for getting reviews, it's take the path of least resistance. It is a numbers game. Obviously, not every customer will write you a review, but if all your reviews are getting filtered, or none of your reviews is none of the customers you ask is actually posting a review, then don't keep doing it. That means you're up against a barrier, and you have to work around the barrier, not just keep hammering through and hope that one customer out of 100 leaves you a review. So I'm going to talk for a minute about how to kind of sidestep those different barriers I just described. So how to get around the resistance that you encounter from the review sites themselves. Really, the two review sites that are really tough to deal with are Yelp and Google+. As you know, they both filter out reviews, so not every customer you ask for a review is going to have his or her review actually show up publicly on your page, and that's a problem because it results in frustrated customers and a frustrated you. How to work around that issue with Yelp is, don't ask people who aren't active Yelpers to write you a review on Yelp. A common misconception about Yelp is that you ask a customer who's never written a review on Yelp before for a review, and it gets filtered, and you wonder why, because it was a legitimate customer, and you didn't pay the customer, you didn't incentivize him or her to write you a review. It's totally legitimate, yet it gets filtered. Yelp doesn't really care about that. What Yelp cares about is the reviewer an active Yelper? In other words, somebody who's written more than a few reviews on Yelp and who seems to be sort of using it habitually. Because if the reviewer isn't active on Yelp, to Yelp that looks weird. Because if you have kind of a one-hit wonder, somebody who has never written a review before on Yelp, one day leaves a business, a 5-star review, and then never comes back to write another review on Yelp, that looks like it was solicited, and that's against Yelp's rules. So the main thing you have to worry about is only ask customers who are already active Yelp users to write you a review on Yelp. Essentially, you want to determine upfront whether someone's an active Yelp user, and if he or she isn't, have them write you a review somewhere else, but not on Yelp. It's sort of a similar. You have to take kind of a similar approach with Google Plus too. And Don kind of went into some good detail on this, so I won't go overboard here. But essentially, Google does filter reviews, and that is a factor. But the biggest kind of barrier on Google is just that it's not as easy as it could be to write a review. So, and some people just don't want to set up a Google Plus profile. So what you don't want to do is make people who don't want to write you a review on Google Plus and don't want to have a Google Plus profile write you a review on Google. You shouldn't just ram it down their throats. You have to give them choices. And so I just want to go through this is kind of a visual outline of what I'm describing. And I talk about this on my website, and this is actually what I talked about at SMX West back in March. But essentially, you want to take a zigzag approach to asking customers for reviews, as opposed to shuttling everybody toward the same review site, regardless of their preferences, regardless of whether they are active users of that review site. So you sort of start off with your first choice, maybe it's Yelp, maybe it's Google. You sort of gauge whether they can or should write you a review there. If they're active on the site, great. You can hint at them that you would like them to leave you a review there. If they're not, kind of steer them toward another site. And Google is somewhat easier than Yelp. If they don't want to set up a Google Plus profile, steer them toward a site like Yahoo or CitySearch or Insider Pages or YP, Angie's List, you name it. There are a bunch of different sites, but the idea is let them choose the path of least resistance for them. Don't tell them specifically where to write a review. Give them guidance. Give them a few choices, but give them choices. Now, as for how to overcome kind of resistance from customers, don't make them think. Don't just say, "Hey, can you write us a review? Thanks." You have to offer them a little guidance. You have to offer them some instruction, even if they don't ask for it, because it just makes it a lot easier and kind of less daunting for them to spend 3 to 5 minutes writing you a review, and they can see that it's not some involved process. They don't have to write War and Peace for you. It can just be a paragraph or two. But your job is to offer them guidance. Don't just do that. You can't just stop there. If you ask them once for reviews in person, right after the transaction or whatever, some customers will write you a review then, but others won't. So a mistake a lot of my clients sometimes make, and I can sort of see why they feel this way. They feel that they would be pestering their customers or their clients if they remind them to write a review. It's okay. It's okay to ask them twice. It doesn't have to be pushy. It doesn't. It can just be, hey, did you have a chance to write us a review? If not, here are some instructions. We'd really appreciate anything you can do for us. So just realize that it's okay to remind your customers. They don't have to do it the first time, but maybe don't ask them 3 or 4 times, but asking them a second time is okay. It's appropriate. Again, don't shove a specific review site down their throat. If they aren't active on Yelp, don't make them do Yelp. If they don't like Google Plus or they find it confusing, don't steer them toward Google Plus. If you ask them for let's say you ask them for a Google Plus review and they say, "Oh, well, I could do that, but I like Yahoo. Would you accept a Yahoo review?" You say yes. Anything and everything you can do, we would appreciate. So let them pick the sites that they like. You'll also want to tell them which sites accept other logins, like Facebook, because a lot of sites actually don't require you to set up a login specifically to write a review on that site. I sort of pulled together a little bit of a chart here. Yelp obviously is sort of a walled garden. You have to have a Yelp username in order to write a review. The same goes for Google, Google Plus. But Insider Pages, City Search, Yahoo, Yellow Pages, Angie's List, other sites too. This is just the beginning. They accept other logins. So you can, if you have one strategy is if you are sort of active on Facebook and you kind of are in touch with a lot of your customers on Facebook, you can ask them for reviews on sites that just let them use their Facebook logins. So they don't have to go through the whole extra step of setting up a separate new username on those sites. So that it eliminates a step for them. It eliminates another step that you have to explain to them, and it makes it a lot easier. And in fact, Yahoo and Angie's List even take they accept Google usernames. If you have somebody who has a Google account, they can go to Yahoo, log into their Google account, and write you a review there. Angie's List pretty much accepts whatever login the customer wants to use. Facebook, Google Plus, Yahoo. So you have a lot of options, and you'll also want to get not only reviews on sites that are sort of non-industry specific, like the ones I just mentioned, but also on industry-specific sites like Avo, Health Grades, TripAdvisor, DealerRater, Home Advisor, you name it. Some of those sites also accept Facebook logins. So that makes it a lot easier. And again, we're talking about taking the path of least resistance. So, if your customers don't want to go through the hassle of creating a new username, you don't have to make them create a new username to write you a review. You can, pretty much everyone has Facebook, so you can kind of eliminate a step that way. Now, last but not least, you want to overcome the resistance from yourself to ask for reviews. As Miles and Dawn kind of alluded to, it's tough. It takes a lot of kind of grinding, to even get a few reviews. Never mind, kind of rack up, an impressive number of them over time. So you got to aim low. You can't tell yourself, okay, I want 20 reviews by the end of the year. Say, I want two or three reviews this month. Break it up into kind of baby steps. Set kind of small goals and just put one foot in front of the other. Kind of similarly, you don't want to put it off and put it off and say, okay, I'm going to have a great big reviews weekend where I spend 8 hours asking all my customers for reviews. Because not only would a lot of those reviews then get filtered, but then it becomes just kind of a daunting chore and another big lingering to-do item. And then you put it off and put it off, and meanwhile, you're not getting any reviews because it becomes this monolithic task. So my advice is just kind of bake it into your sales and kind of fulfillment process. Make it kind of a second nature as handing out a business card. Just ask every customer, real time for a review, and follow up with that person. It's not hard if it becomes just an everyday sort of second nature habit. You also don't want to pitch or kind of incentivize the reviews. You want to ask customers casually. No, there's nothing in it for the customer. You're not going to wave a Starbucks card in their face or give them 10% off their next transaction from you. But it's a personal favor. If they're happy, if they have any feedback they'd like to give you, you would appreciate a review. So it's not the kind of thing you want to think hard about. Gee, how do I ask my customers? Just ask, and just do it however, in whatever way it comes most naturally to you. Above all, you're going to want to give yourself time. It takes months, if not years, to really, really get an impressive portfolio of reviews. Not only on Google, but on Yelp, all these other sites. It's not going to happen next week. It's not going to happen probably next month. But if you give it time, and it just becomes part of your, it just becomes a habit, and you sort of realize that even if you ask a bunch of customers for reviews and none of them leaves you a review, or you ask a bunch of customers and they all get filtered, that's telling you something. You can kind of refine your review request process over time. Figure out what works for you. But you got to just get it started, and you have to aim low and just realize that it's going to take time. But like anything that's worth doing, it rewards kind of a slow and steady approach. So with that, that's pretty much it for me. Thanks for listening, and I look forward to your questions in the Q&A.
Okay, Phil, that's great. Thank you very much for that. And just going to move to the Q&A now. Just as we're doing that, I guess what I kind of take away from what sort of Phil said is a few kind of key things. One, like you said, it does take time to build reviews, particularly in a way where the reviews are going to stick and kind of be done naturally. And it isn't something you do just at one point in time then forget about, because A, that looks unnatural, and B, as those reviews age, people start to trust them a little bit less because they're not fresh. They don't reflect the current state of a business. And I really like the idea about baking reviews into your kind of CRM approach. Maybe CRM is a kind of acronym that is kind of beyond what kind of most sort of small businesses think of, but the CRM really is just kind of keeping in touch with your customers. So considering that a lot of your customers might have come to you from referrals in the first place, or they might have read an online review before selecting you. You then asking them to leave a review is not going to seem out of place to them, because people are getting much more accustomed to using reviews to influence their own kind of sort of purchasing choices. So why shouldn't they then leave a review having had a good experience with you? People are getting much more kind of alert and aware and kind of happy to sort of do these things. Phil, I thought it was quite interesting actually to look at your that review ecosystem sort of slide or PDF that Don showed in his bit here. I haven't seen this before.
Right.
I think it's really interesting to see, how reviews are kind of syndicated out across the kind of sort of main, kind of IYPs and sort of search sites. And it's obviously US based, so it's not. And some of these sites will be in Canada as well. Most of them aren't in the UK. I mean, if you look particularly, you talked a bit about the sort of city grid, which has got obviously kind of city search at the heart of it. If you look at city search up in the kind of top left here, you can see that reviews from city search flow into almost every other site out there, except for Yelp, except for sort of TripAdvisor. Would you see sort of city search as a great place to put one review to get it out onto many different sites, and therefore a review on city search has more impact than, say, a native review left on Judy's book? Phil, that's a question for you, by the way.
Right. Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, you just a little bit of background about the reviews ecosystem. I mean, obviously, you can tell that it was inspired by David Nim's local search ecosystem, which kind of describes
Yeah, you ripped
which.
it off, Phil.
Yeah, I totally ripped it off, but in the blog post I did on this last year, I gave David kind of the fulsome praise that he deserves. So it was kind of an inspiration. So I'm sort of riffing off of that idea of which I mean David obviously talked for years now he has just outlined um, which sites provide kind of basic business information, kind of citation info to other sites. What are the feeding relationships? So, and over time, I noticed that there were basically feeding relationships among review sites. As you said, Miles, city search reviews are well, for one thing, they're really a black sheep because they really go a long way. I mean, I think it may have changed in the past year plus since I actually charted this out. But last I checked, City Search fed reviews to like 14 other sites, including Bing. And that's important because one common misconception people have about Bing is that they think, they ask, how do I get a Bing review? Well, basically, there's no such thing as Bing reviews anymore. 2 or 3 years ago, Bing started just syndicating reviews from other sites, and in this case, it's City Search, Insider Pages, Yelp. I think TripAdvisor too does feed Bing. Um, but that getting reviews on City Search is one of really 2 or 3 ways to get reviews on Bing, and a lot of people don't realize that. And a lot of people also don't realize that City Search, as I mentioned, it's a real easy site to write a review on. I don't even think reviews are filtered. So of course that means there's some junk on there, but it also means on the plus side that your customers don't have to create a City Search login in order to write you a review there. They can just log into their Facebook accounts and go to town. And the same is true of Insider Pages. And I think one thing that's changed since I did this sort of map this out last year is that I think now it's kind of a two-way street between Insider Pages and City Search. In other words, it used to be the case that if you had a review on City Search, it would get fed to Insider Pages, and then would get in turn fed to other kind of smaller sites. Now I think I've seen it work the other way also. That you have a review on Insider Pages, it also is fed to City Search, and of course then gets spread all over creation. So one sort of takeaway is that those two sites are really neglected by a lot of business owners. It is really in your best interest to at least get a couple reviews each on City Search and Insider Pages, because again those they essentially become it's not one review, it's like 14 reviews because they get spread to all these different sites. And by the way, I did also do this for Canada last year. If you go to Darren Shaw's blog at whitespark.ca, I did a Canadian reviews ecosystem. And actually, some other people have asked me in recent months about a UK reviews ecosystem, and I would love to do that at some point. I have a million other posts I'd like to do. And it should actually be somewhat simpler than this, but I just want to say that if anyone out there wants to kind of do the research and create kind of map out the UK reviews ecosystem, that's perfectly fine with me.
Okay, great. I feel that's excellent. So I think it's a really useful slide to just understand, how you can, I guess, sort of, magnify the impact of one review through the kind of sort of various distribution networks. So I'm going to jump on to some of the kind of key questions that have come up, and one actually is about kind of review syndication and duplicate content, and how again how people can kind of maximize the impact of reviews. So a few kind of questions on this vein. Maybe this is one for Don. What's your opinion about taking a real review from a real customer and publicizing it on a fake profile that you've set up on a site or a service like like kind of Google or Yelp?
Yeah, these kind of things they're frustrating because it's tempting to do that, but it usually just ends badly. I don't think it's a good idea because what you can see where Google is going and where Yelp is going. I mean, if you think about how their Yelp review filter works, a lot of the things that they look for, and again, this is sort of guesswork and experimentation based on a lot of different local search people, but they're looking for things like how many other reviews has this person posted? Do they have a profile picture? When was the last time they logged into Yelp or checked into a business? They're looking at things like this, right? And so creating fake profiles to get those reviews out there usually doesn't work very well. I'm getting a lot of keyboard.
I think Phil maybe might be hitting it, thumping his keyboard there. Phil, are you angry at your keyboard?
Yes, I was. Sorry about that. I forgot to mute myself. So my apologies
God,
if my
your
keystrokes.
your poor keyboard.
No problem.
Interestingly enough, I did some consultation for a UK-based review site last year, or maybe 18 months ago, and they've been running a kind of long time, and they had a very well-developed kind of spam sort of filtering system. They developed kind of proprietarily themselves, but as with any business in this sort of sphere, they kind of build up a knowledge and an ability to kind of identify kind of spammy reviews, and it's probably not that far off, what a lot of other kind of directories and kind of Google uses. And the key indicators that they used to use are one was IP address. IP address when you're posting a review for the same business multiple times was a key giveaway, and they would immediately flag any reviews from the sort of same IP address. Other key ones were the velocity of reviews, so how quickly reviews were added, to a profile. If a profile had traditionally had, 2 reviews a month, and suddenly they got 30 reviews in a month, that was flagged up, kind of after the event as kind of potential spam, and then was reviewed by the kind of editorial team. There was also kind of concentration of star rating as well, is one thing they used. If there's an unnatural kind of cluster of sort of similar star ratings, that would kind of trigger the sort of review filter. And also freshness of account was another one. So had a user been registered for 1 day and written 5 reviews, or had they been registered for 2 months and written 5 reviews, it gave them a very different sort of flavor for what that kind of reviewer might be like. So I think as a lot of these kind of guys understand technology and they understand the psychology of reviews, I'm sure these filters are relatively similar in terms of the kind of indicators that they use. So another question that comes through is, if I've got reviews on Google Plus, or I've got reviews on Yelp, and I want to take that review content and put it on my own site or my client's site, is that going to get those reviews banned or removed, or seen as duplicate and then actually removed from the site of origin? Phil, have you got an answer to that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So yeah, I mean, I would be glad to take a crack at that. The short answer is that that is not kosher by Google standards. I mean, they explicitly say that not only can you not post sort of, but I think the nomenclature is cross post. Not only can you not cross post a Google Plus review on your website, but you cannot put it on a site. You can't publish it anywhere else on the web. So you can't tell a customer, okay, thanks for your Google Plus review. Now go put it on City Search. Now go put it on Yahoo. Um, the
But how about your own
and
site? Because it legitimately is a business. That's
that's
a recommendation for your business. You own
right.
that. Is it down to the terms and conditions in Google Plus, or is it just down to spam filters?
It's really well. The thing is that actually a lot of business owners do that, and even though it's against the rules, they get away with it. I mean, I don't know. Again, Google specifically says you cannot a Google Plus review that is published on your profile cannot be anywhere else. But a lot of business owners don't know that, and they end up putting their review, they copying and pasting their Google Plus reviews and putting them on their site. And their Google Plus reviews seem usually not to get filtered. I mean, um, so it sort of shouldn't work, but it does. I mean, generally, I would not suggest doing it because it doesn't really add a lot. I would say, if you feel you must, sort of show off those Google Plus reviews, at least grab them as images and put them on your site. Because even though the chances are good that you can just copy and paste them outright, um, you don't want to lose your reviews. You don't want to be that guy who gets whose reviews just go poof because he put them on his website. So my philosophy there is just better safe than sorry.
What's your, another few questions are kind of coming through off the back of that. Someone's saying they've used a service that offers the the kind of syndication of reviews out to like Facebook and Twitter. I'm not sure that's necessarily in a kind of sharing or sort of sort of publishing sense. Have you noticed sort of any experience of that becoming, also kind of being flagged in Google, particularly using sites like Facebook to redistribute your reviews?
Yeah, I can take a crack at that one as well. I mean, I think Don would probably have some great, probably better insights into that than I would, because he's sort of the review tools guru. But um, yeah, I mean, it sort of depends on what exactly the review site, aka reputation management company, aka reviews tool, is promising. I mean, if they're saying, that they will take, kind of the positive feedback, the good karma from Facebook and Twitter, the comments that people post, and what have you. And if they're saying that they will post those comments on other review sites, kind of pretending to be a customer, then that's not good. Um, a lot of the review sites that they would probably post to probably wouldn't actually filter out those reviews. So if your review management people, grabbed the positive feedback that was just posted on your Facebook page, for instance, and put it on City Search and on, let's say Yahoo, those reviews would probably actually stay around. But the trouble is they would just look kind of fishy. Because probably the reviews company would probably do something stupid like post them all on the same day. Um, there's so many ways that kind of approach could look weird to customers, that I would say it's probably not worth it. But if on the other hand, the tool, the service or what have you had some way to basically contact, again, the people who follow you on Facebook, and say, hey, here are some sites where you can just stay logged into Facebook and just write us a review. It only takes 2 or 3 minutes. Sites like again, Yahoo, City Search Insider Pages, Angie's List, sites that accept Facebook usernames. If the tool or service just asked customers to do that, and the customers ended up posting their reviews personally, rather than through the service that you're paying for, then that's okay.
Okay, great. Another question sort of come through, I guess, about when you're looking at, I guess, the sort of spam filters or the particular kind of identifiers for reviews. How much of it is the content of the review, and how much of it is, the nature of the individual leaving the review. Do you have any idea of the kind of weighting, in those two, in the order of those two?
If you don't mind, I have a little bit to throw in there. So this is Don. You know, I like to look at it like this. If you look at what's happening in the SEO world right now, what's happening, right? They're trying to take care of, Google is trying to take care of duplicate content. And how are they doing that? They're instituting things like Google authorship, right? They're trying to figure out how do we know who actually published this article and who it's associated with. And over time, I see that becoming more and more important, right? And the same kind of thing I think is going to happen in reviews, because I think look at now on Google or Yelp, you can't just log in and you can't do an anonymous review. You have to be logged in as a user to leave a review there. So I believe that it's safe to assume that these review filters look at both, right? They're going to look in the content for duplicate stuff, for URLs, for names of people and things like this, and that's going to trigger a filter. And then also they're going to look at who left the review, and to try to determine, is this a legit under this profile. So it's kind of like Penguin and Panda, right? So people got away with buying links for a while and producing thin content sites, but eventually Google came along and caught them and hammered them. And so I kind of like to take a longer term view of this stuff and think that the same thing's going to happen here.
Okay.
Yeah,
Interestingly,
I'd like
kind of.
to throw in my 2 cents really quickly about that. And I mean, Don really hit the nail on the head. I mean, there's sort of the reputation part, sort of aspect of reviews has kind of actually become a sort of a two-way street. We're not only talking about the business's reputation, but the reputation of the reviewer. So again, as Don said, unless unless you are blatantly violating the rules by including a URL or some sort of profanity in your review, then it's not really about the content. It's more about your identity as a reviewer. That seems, I've seen Google reviews that are almost haiku length, that are just like a short sentence that that don't get filtered. I've also seen really long ones that don't get filtered. I've seen long ones that do get filtered. So it's really not about the content there. And on Yelp, by the way, once you are an elite reviewer, and that's sort of a whole different separate can of worms, because there's a whole process to become a Yelp elite reviewer. You have to get picked. But once you are a Yelp elite reviewer, um, your reviews aren't filtered anymore. Because at that point, Yelp has such trust in your identity as a reviewer that they say, even if you want to write something that's a 3-word review, or a 1,000-word diatribe about about a particular business, that's okay. They just aren't filtered at that point. So really, the two sites that do tend to filter reviews also sort of have to establish, they sort of have to get an identity, associate an identity with the reviewer. And that seems to be the thing that matters most to the review filters.
Okay. Interestingly enough, kind of on a sort of tangent from that sort of slightly, on the screen at the moment you've got the recent local search ranking factors sort of piece here, and as you can see in the kind of right-hand column, you've got kind of competitive difference makers. At point 3, there you've actually got quantity of reviews by authority reviewers. So Yelp Elite or multiple places reviewers. That's interesting. That's actually a more important competitive factor than actually the quantity of native reviews, which is down in 6th place on that. So I guess that is sort of testimony to the impact that an individual reviewer and the kind of quality and authority they can have actually on ranking itself. A question about ranking is, was it, says, what are the thresholds for reviews to show up in the search results? We looked a little bit about at the kind of recent kind of changes to the kind of carousel results, and also at the kind of, Phil, you had a slide showing kind of branded search, which I think had Yelp in there, it had BBB, and I think it had sort of yellow pages. Do you know how many reviews or sort of star ratings required to get your reviews showing in either the carousel or the Google results or any of those third-party and directory or IYP results when you're actually looking at a Google search page?
Yeah. I can say just right off the top of my head that the threshold for Google Plus is five reviews. Sometimes actually the review stars show up at when you have 4 reviews, but those are sort of the exceptions and not the rule. It's generally 5. You need 5 reviews. But as for the other sites, Yelp, City Search, Yellow Pages, etc., even if you have 1 review on those sites, you get the sort of rich snippet stars to show up in the search results for a branded search. So really the name of the game on those sites is just to at least get 1 review on the board. Now, of course, you want to make sure it's a good review, because otherwise that star, if somebody gives you, if your um, the very first review you get on Yelp is 1 star, and that's the only review you have, when people search for your business by name, they're going to see, what do you think they're going to see in the search results? They're going to see, Google Plus, 5-star rating, Yellow Pages 5-star rating, Yelp 1-star rating. So, but yeah, the long story short, the threshold for all the sites except Google is 1 review.
Yeah, kind of keeping on that sort of same theme, another question that came in actually from Dan League, who posted ahead of time. Dan, thank you very much for that. It says that, is there a limit or a kind of desired number of reviews a business should have to kind of give them validity online? We've talked there about visibility, so you need to have 5 reviews to kind of get your star rating showing within kind of Google Plus. But for individual directories, you can just have 1 rating or 1 review and have your rating showing. Is there a certain number to kind of give you validity? And I guess that's probably in the eyes of the consumer. Obviously, and I talked about the results of the consumer review survey. Most people said they read 6 reviews and no more in terms of kind of forming an opinion. So 6 would be a kind of good number to aim for, but I think you also have to consider it over what time period. I get quite frustrated if I go to Google Plus or I go to Google, I search for a business, I see they've got 7 reviews, and I click through and I see that, of those 7 reviews, 4 of them were reviewed 2 years ago. 2 reviews are from 1 year ago, and 1 review is from 4 months ago. So it's like, well, what does that say to me? I mean, 4 months can be, a lifetime in a small business. So much can change within that business in that time. So I think, it's not just about the quantity of reviews you have. Sure, quantity matters, but I think, people are more intelligent than that, and there's some subjectivity around the kind of quantity of reviews. And I think freshness as well as star rating has a big impact on how people see those reviews, whether they see them as valid reviews for them to put their trust in, and therefore to kind of pick the business based on those reviews. And also, velocity and recency of reviews is starting to have an impact in actual kind of server search ranking as well. So, to answer your question shortly, Dan, I would say you've got to have at least 6, but you've got to make sure that 6 reviews is within a relatively recent sort of space of time. Another question that came in yesterday from Scott Hearn. He says, I've always wondered why some local businesses with very few reviews rank so highly in local search results. There's a company I'm thinking of in my mind that hasn't got any reviews, but basically owns the 3-pack. Don, have you got maybe want to sort of handle that particular question?
So I heard the second part that you've got this company that's dominating with no reviews, and then what did you say about the first one? The part of the question?
Uh, Basically, the question is, I've seen businesses dominate search results with very few reviews. Why is that?
Oh, I got you. Yeah. Well, looking back, it's just reviews is just one of the factors, right? There are so many factors that Google looks at for ranking that reviews, even if you don't have reviews, but maybe you've got a lot of these other factors lined up. You've got a strong website with the domain's been around for a while and it's optimized nicely, and there's a lot of other citations around on the web. Then they could absolutely rank a business that doesn't have some of those things but has a lot of reviews. So I think we just have to keep in mind here from a ranking perspective. I think Phil pointed this out in his slide that reviews is one of many factors, and it's definitely something that's good, but it's not going to compensate for missing a bunch of other things.
So reviews are one factor among many, and which we
Yeah.
did some analysis recently using our Google Plus Local Wizard tool, which looks at a number of different factors that influence ranking. And reviews didn't necessarily have much kind of correlation to where someone appeared in the top 10. And I think where, for me, reviews really comes into play is that standout that it creates, either the standout in the kind of typical search listings or standout in the kind of carousel. That's where, having a high quantity of reviews with a good star rating really comes into its own. It basically waves a flag for your business, allows you to stand, and stand out from your kind of competitors. And local search pages are getting kind of more and more cluttered. It's often difficult to kind of pick out which of the businesses you want to use. But now that Google started showing the kind of star ratings more prominently within the search results, it's a great way for your business to get noticed. We're
Yeah,
going to
I'd
have
actually
one.
like to add
Sorry.
one quick point about that. Yeah, I mean, reviews. They only matter to rankings so much, but certainly going forward, Google has put a lot. It seems to be setting up reviews to be very even more important than they have been so far because of like the new Google Maps, for instance. Where you can search, you can have if you're searching for a local business, within the new Google Maps, there's an option for filtering search results like by reviews, by which businesses were reviewed by top reviewers, or which have the most reviews. Google, I'm referring to Google reviews, of course. So they're going forward, they're going to matter quite a lot to to anybody who's really searching for your business in Google, like within Google Maps or the Google Maps app, and of course the carousel too, because the reviews with the yellow stars on a black background, which is in turn on a white background, they really pop out. So Google is really setting the stage up for Google reviews specifically to matter even more.
Okay, thanks for that, Phil. A couple more, two more questions, and then we're going to go into the last sort of section. We are kind of running over time, but I think this is a really kind of great Q&A session. Um, Once it says, in the past, Phil and Mike B, that's Mike Blumenthal, have talked about how if you're logged into your Google Plus business sort of profile, you can leave reviews for other businesses, and those might be more sticky than, say, a general consumer review. Maybe because Google knows more about you, it trusts you a little bit more. I don't know, Phil. Have you had any kind of sort of experience, kind of that working?
Yeah, not. I haven't. It's more been kind of theoretical. I mean, actually, Mike Blumenthal and David Nim were really the first guys to talk about that. I mean, I sort of mentioned it in a couple of posts I did, and I don't have a lot of clients who have actually availed themselves of that of the ability to write a review as a business for another business. Because for one thing, it takes you need to have the sort of upgraded Google Plus for Business page. And probably I would say 50% of my clients have that. The other 50% don't. Um, so I don't have a lot of firsthand experience with it. I know a couple of people who commented on my blog where I mentioned that strategy did kind of give me examples of one business writing a review of another. But it is low hanging fruit. A lot of businesses have the ability, but just don't know that they can do it. So I would definitely recommend giving it a try.
Okay, great. And one other kind of final question that's come through a couple of times is, does it, we've talked about kind of IP address of the person sending the review, but given that Google knows more and more about users, does it make a difference about their physical location? If someone is in the same zip code or the same city, then it's more likely to be a genuine review than someone, say, based on the other side of the US or in an entirely different country. Do you have any kind of knowledge of actual location of the user, probably based in their particular kind of Google Plus account, and whether that impacts the validity or filtering of a review? Phil?
Oh, I didn't know if that was sort of an open question because I think that's right up Don's alley, and he's
Okay,
probably.
Don.
Well, of course, we don't know what's in the algorithm. I mean, the problem there is that people can travel, right? So I'm traveling a lot, for work and going to conferences and things like that. And maybe I'm reviewing a restaurant in one city one day and another city the other day. But one common way for people to find and smoke out false reviews is that you'll find a particular reviewer and look up the other reviews that that person has left, and many times you'll see them in many cities thousands of miles apart all during the same day. Like that same person left 15 reviews in one day, and it would have been impossible for them to travel. So I can only imagine that the Google and Yelp algorithms are sophisticated enough to figure that out. I mean, I can't guarantee that that's part of the algorithm, but it kind of makes sense. So I don't know if that answered the question, but I wouldn't. I would think that would be something they're going to catch. If they don't catch it now, they'd catch it pretty soon.
Okay, that's great. So listen, guys, we're going to draw the Q&A to a close, and we're just going to jump into the sort of final section. Donna Phil, if you could just put your mics on mute until I call upon you in a second. In this section, just wanted to just run through in under 10 minutes just some of the kind of key review tools that both Don, Phil, and myself like and use. What is useful or to kind of think about is before you kind of sort of jump in there and start using the vast array of review kind of tools and sort of services out there, is to kind of figure out what it is you want from that particular tool. And different tools often have different kind of sort of specialisms or sort of focuses. So, is it that you want to get more reviews online, via your website, through visitors actually kind of going to your site, or do you want to drive offline customers to leave reviews? Because that's essentially a very different process that you could be kind of embarking on there. Or is your kind of your purpose to actually kind of track reviews, to get alerts, and then respond to those? So maybe your problem is actually not about volume of reviews; it's about managing the reputation and the kind of sentiment and the bad reviews essentially that are left. Or are you kind of more interested in kind of tracking social mentions? Maybe your business has got a big enough kind of social footprint that people are mentioning it in Twitter, in sort of Foursquare, for example, that you want to kind of keep track of those kind of sort of secondary secondary sites. So what I did is I actually put together just about sort of seven sort of services that I want to kind of review here that give you a whole spectrum of options. I mean, there are a lot more products out there, but these are the ones that I've liked, that I've seen, that I think would meet the needs of the majority of people. So hopefully I've narrowed down that field of opportunity for you and just kind of pulling out some of the key pieces. So the first service I wanted to have a look at or just talk about is called Vendasta. Vendasta is an enterprise scale reputation kind of tracking solution. I mean, it's got the most comprehensive feature set of any sort of reputation and sort of social media monitoring sort of tool that I've seen. It's incredibly full on. It's very full scale. I personally find it a little bit intimidating because it's very complex and very involved. And when you start to look at it, you realize that the myriad of features just kind of keep going on and on and on. So it's very, very feature rich. It covers off, reviews on core sites, both tracking reviews, but also going and kind of getting reviews. Looks at social, looks at kind of social mentions, looks at tweets, likes, etc. Wraps all that up in there, and also it does some really good kind of sentiment analysis. So it helps you understand, whether a review is positive, quite positive, or not very positive, which is great because it gives you, a whole lot of kind of core information at your fingertips. What it's really designed for actually is for resellers to sell into SMBs. So it's used by a lot of like large scale media businesses or kind of local kind of sort of agencies who can white label the product and sell it into their customers. And they've got a lot of kind of support that goes with it. Because of this, it's a very complex product, very involved, and also it's pretty expensive when compared to other services. It starts off at $60 per month per location for their kind of basic standard review tracking, and then scales right up to well above 300 for a real range of sort of different kind of support services that you can have, and you can have people actually go and respond to the reviews on your behalf, and that's on a kind of cost per review basis. So the cost can really scale depending on which service you get. But that's really designed for people who want to go and resell the service, into actual SMBs. Then you've got a more kind of classic review monitoring service called Review Push. Comes in at $29 a month per location. It's much more simple and focused solution than Vendasta. It's not as feature rich, but by getting rid of those features, it gets rid of a lot of the complexity and obviously a lot of the cost. What it's really good for is kind of tracking reviews, getting kind of daily email alerts, notifying you about when new reviews have been posted. It's really good for single location businesses, but also has great kind of roll up solutions for multi location. So if you want to look at reviews and star rating across a whole range, across a whole set of sort of branches, you can do that, and you can compartmentalize by region. So if you've got a national client that operates in 5 states, you can have each of those states compartmentalized, so you can see how each state compares. So it's got a lot of effort into that kind of multi-location feature piece, and it's also got a review request tool as well. So as well as monitoring reviews, you can also go out and use this little request page to try and solicit more reviews from people who have just used your service. What's not so great about it is it's manual setup. So there's a bit of a lag time for you getting your reports. The reports visualization is not brilliant. It's good at kind of tracking the reports, but and tracking the reviews, but actually then displaying it in charts, it's not that great. And I said it just tracks reviews and doesn't do any of the sort of social stuff or any of the sort of sentiment analysis. Another similar one is called Review Trackers. Again, it's about $27 a month. The other one was $29, so there's not much in it. What I think is really great about this again, it's kind of very focused on reviews. It monitors a much wider range of sites than Review Push. It's 50 plus sites, and they're both general sites, but also key verticals in like healthcare, I think, healthcare, plumbing, or kind of handyman services in kind of hotels and leisure. So it's got a more of a kind of broader coverage in terms of the sites that it tracks. It's also got a great kind of review request engine that's a little bit more evolved and developed than Review Push. It's got good single location, multi-location reports. It's also got a great agency option, so you can white label the dashboard so that your customers can kind of log in, or your clients can log in with a dashboard that's got your colors and your logo on it. And they've got a free trial for one location, which is pretty good. But again, it just tracks reviews and not sort of social mentions. Another similar one is called Reviews Inc. And this one actually monitors over 150 review sites, so it's even more comprehensive, but it's almost double the price at $49 per month per location. So at that kind of price point, it gets quite expensive if if you've got a 10 or 15 clients. That's quite a lot of monthly cost that you're kind of taking on board there. Particularly if that's a multi-location customer that's going to get even more expensive for them. But they do have a white label platform. They do have reseller options. So I think some negotiation could be done there. It collects and publishes reviews. You can then also feed some of those reviews onto your site. And we kind of talked about that kind of review distribution. I think they do it through, either an iframe or kind of JavaScript, so you haven't got that duplicate content issue with your reviews appearing on the same site as on sites like Yelp, City Search, for example. Downsides to it, it's got a pretty big setup fee, and it just again distracts reviews and not social. Grade Us is one that actually Phil kind of brought to my attention. And what Grade Us does, basically, again, it's a pretty simple focused solution. It's actually focused on getting reviews. It doesn't really have any kind of review tracking capabilities within it. It's basically allows you to create a review funnel and a review request page. And when Phil explained his kind of his kind of zigzag approach of, don't force a non-Yelper to use Yelp, and don't force a non-Googler to use Google. Give them a range of options, make it clear and easy for them to select the one they want. And that's what Grade Us does. It allows you to build a page which has got nice clear links through to all of your different kind of sort of review sites, and those pages can be white labeled. So as an SEO, you could create your own version of them and give them to your customers, or they could actually appear on your own customers' sites as well. So that appears to be a pretty nice solution. It's priced at $90 per location or $59 for agencies. So again, if you've got a number of clients, I think you can spread that $59 across a lot of them. It's also got a free option to try their basic account. They do offer review monitoring, but it's $10 a month per location, and again, just tracks reviews and not social. Then I've got a couple of products that we have within the Bright Local toolset. One is called ReviewBiz, and you've got an example of a ReviewBiz badge on the right-hand side. That's a little JavaScript badge that you can create very quickly and easily within your Bright Local account. You can create it for each location, and it produces this badge with links through to the individual profiles that your business or your client's business has got links on. You can then grab this bit of code and you can stick it on your customer's site, and it's a very kind of slick and easy way to kind of gather all your links into one particular badge and then get it quickly published onto your client's site. So there are direct links going through from their site through to their social profiles. These badges can also be white labeled. So if you see at the bottom it says search engine optimization tools by Bright Local, you could actually substitute that text for your own text. So it could be SEO services from your business, and you can also embed a backlink in there as well. So it's a nice way to benefit your client but also benefit yourself if you're a search marketer. To use ReviewBiz, you have to be a user of Bright Local and have an account with us to be able to kind of create a badge. And we also have a new service coming out next month called Review Flow. And Review Flow is going to basically be a simple, clean solution that tracks about 15 to 20 of the kind of main review sites and provides email alerts when we've identified new reviews for you. It actually kind of pulls in all the review content so you can read, you get the star rating as well as the count of reviews and all the kind of individual kind of review content. You can see that within your account. It's got some nice, clean and simple charts, and you'll be able to kind of download kind of white label reports to share with your customers. And we're going to be pricing that at $5 a month per location, and that will launch next month. So for any of our customers, you'll get some free credits for that in your account when it launches, but there will also be some kind of bundled add-ons if you want to get more report volume for more customers. And finally, it's got Get 5 Stars. So I'm going to hand over to Don to talk about Get 5 Stars.
Hey, thanks, Miles. I'll keep this brief. I know we're wrapping up here. Basically, we launched several months ago, and we kind of did a quiet launch to get feedback and things like we've got a lot of people using the system now. And basically, our focus has been to sort of have a system that'll help you engage with customers and get feedback, right? So it's sort of like an easy to implement best practice customer feedback review management process. So we don't sort of like go and say send an email, ask for reviews. It's more like asking for feedback first, and then depending on that feedback, either going and taking care of the customer if it's not good, or asking them for online reviews after that. So we've got a nice little process. I've been working with Mike Blumenthal as a part of this as well. So a lot of his vision about the best process for managing customer reviews, soliciting and tracking feedback, minimizing bad reviews, pushing testimonials to the business website. So one of the things we do is when we ask for that initial feedback, we have a widget that goes on your website that allows you to publish testimonials there. And this is different content than what someone might post in their Google review or their Yahoo review. So it's different content. It's not duplicate. And we encoded that as in the schema.org review format. So it's all crawlable by Google. But anyway, I'm pretty excited about it. We've had a lot of great feedback, and we're charging ahead with this. So thanks, Miles, for giving me the chance to bring it up.
That's all right. Actually, Don, on that point you mentioned about schema.org and using a kind of correct markup for reviews, quite a few questions kind of came through about that. What do you think is and obviously we understand why schema should be used because it allows Google to understand what that content is about, and all the other search engines to understand what that content is about. But can it have a negative impact if you're almost trying to flag up your reviews too heavily to kind of Google? And how does Google kind of actually use that kind of review or testimonial content that you have on your own site?
Well, it's a good question, and it's early days on this stuff. But what we've seen is if you have content on your website that's marked up properly as reviews, then Google they say they will crawl that content, right? Now the real question though is how much does Google respect your web page and your website that it's on? And in cases where we've seen a nice web page that has this content on it that's respected by Google, meaning that Google has some page rank associated with that, they know that it's a legitimate business, we've seen those stars show up in search results on Google in the organic results. So it's kind of cool. Once you get to the point where Google trusts your website, those can help you in the way that you mentioned earlier, right, Miles, where you said if you see the stars next to the listing, it helps you stand out from some of the other listings on the page. It's
Interesting.
also
So
considered,
you've seen
yeah,
actual testimonial recently, actual testimonials on an individual business website appear in Google as if they're being crawled.
yeah. hmm but the page that they're on has to have some, we've seen at least like a PR2 and some other factors. So it's not, and it's only for certain keywords. So it's not like all of a sudden you're going to put schema.org stuff on and, boom, everything shows up. But for certain pages that Google has that sort of respect for, then we have seen them show up in the organics.
Ah, that's very interesting. Okay, and that's appearing
Lynn,
in organics rather than appearing against a Google Plus listing.
yeah, exactly, right.
Ah,
Linda also mentioned, I forgot to mention that we do have, for Get 5 stars, we do offer a white label version of this for agencies. So thanks for bringing that up, Linda.
great, Don. Thank you very much. That's excellent. I look forward. I haven't tried Get 5 stars, but I will try that this afternoon. Looks really nice. So, guys, this is just a quick kind of overview table of the different services we kind of talked about above. Talks about the service, the main feature, the cost, and if there's a free trial available. So, the idea of this is we won't be going to cover the entire industry, but here are some sites that we like, some services that we like. Hopefully, we've narrowed down the field of vision a little bit for you. It's up to you guys to go and try them and see which ones you think kind of work for your particular needs. So, this chart will be available obviously on the slide deck. We put on the SlideShare, so you don't have to kind of grab all this information right now. Great, so that's it. Just a quick little roundup. Just to say we've got some upcoming webinars have been planned, but not kind of set in stone yet. This is the 5th webinar we've done. We're probably going to have a month break now while we kind of regroup, figure out what we've done well and what can be improved upon. But these are the next sort of 4 topics that we want to cover. It's Google Plus Local Advanced, and Linda's going to be leading that one sometime in October or November. Then we're going to look at optimization for service area businesses. Then we're going to look at mobile marketing for local businesses, and then a kind of local ranking factors debate. And that'll probably take us up till the end of the year. So we're probably going to have a break for kind of 4 or 5 weeks now, but we'll be back in October with a great new schedule of webinars for you. So please hold with us, and we will let you know in advance of all the dates and all the speakers that we have organised for those. If you want to kind of keep track of the kind of Inside Local sort of series, you can do that either on Bright Local, but also on the local search forum. And that is it. So a big thank you to Don and Phil for sharing their time and expertise with us today, and obviously in the lead up to this webinar. A big thank you to Linda for helping with the chat box today, but a particularly big thank you to everyone who's listened in for all your great questions, all your great comments, and to just kind of supporting us and supporting everyone else within the group. It's really nice to see a good amount of kind of camaraderie and community forming around the Inside Local project. And I promise you we'll be back with a fantastic new schedule of events very soon. So from me, good night. From our guest speakers, good night. Everyone take care. Have a great day wherever you are. Thanks a lot, guys.